Hi everyone, as you know we were due to start the third book in the trilogy by Marita Conlon-McKenna. We read Under the Hawthorn Tree and Wildflower Girl. This is Fields of Home, the third book. This is the cover and the blurb reads as follows. Ailee, Michael and Peggy survived the Great Famine, but now Ireland is in turmoil again. Here the struggle for the land is vividly explored through the story of Ailee and her young family. Will little Mary Bridget suffer the hardships endured by her mother? And when the big house burns, will Michael find work? So it looks like we're back in Ireland now again, not America. So with the people who remained at home, which were Ailee and Michael especially. You might remember that Ailee got married when we read about it last. Okay. So you can see here there's 25 chapters. Today we're going to do chapter 1. Just a case of listen and enjoy now. Chapter 1, The Homestead. Mary Bridget walked across the tufts of springy summer grass, helping her mother, Ailee, to carry the heavy wash basket. She loved days like this when the sky was so blue and the grass so green you could almost hear it grow beneath your feet. So obviously Mary Bridget is Ailee's child. Ailee was the eldest daughter, the eldest girl of the three of them that survived in Under the Hawthorn Tree. Ailee is also Peggy's niece. She could see her daddy, John, down below in the potato field, weeding the drills. This year there would be a grand crop, he'd said, to judge by the healthy green leaves and stalks. And that's what all the men were saying. Bella, the milking cow, moved slowly through the field beyond the potato patch, chewing constantly and flicking away the annoying flies with her tail. Mary Bridget, will you pass me up that shift and those stockings of Nano's? Called Ailee. Mary Bridget lifted up the soaking garments to her mother, giggling as water from the clothes dripped down her bare skinny legs and onto her feet, drenching the bottom of her loose blue cotton dress. Soon the line of rope that stretched between the young oak tree at the end of the field and the wooden pole near the house was bedecked with an assortment of wet clothing. Finally, Ailee spread out a sheet on a bush to dry. "'Tis done," Ailee smiled and dried her hands on her apron, then stopped to rest for a few minutes. "Isn't it a grand day, pet?" The soft wind that would dry the clothes caught at the strands of Mary Bridget's fair hair, tossing it in every direction. 'Twas a torment how her hair always ended up in tangles and knots, while her mother's fine hair was so easily patted into place. She watched as her mother's gaze took in the land and fields all around them. "See those walls, Mary Bridget? Your daddy's daddy, Granddaddy Joshua, and his daddy built those stone walls. They had to dig the rocks and stones from under the earth and lift them, and they got more rocks from the riverbank. Then they laid them one by one on top of each other. It took them a long, long time." Mary Bridget ran her eyes along the low grey stone walls, each stone balanced perfectly with another, that formed the boundary of their small farm, with its potato field, the rough hilly pasture, and the stony patch where her mother's vegetables and a square of wheat fought to grow. Her daddy and mammy worked so hard clearing the soil, planting it and weeding it. Mostly daddy had to work for the landlord, of course, tending to their own land only when he could get a minute free. In the distance, Muck, the pig they were fattening for winter, squealed hungrily from the ramshackle pig pen. "We'd better get him some scraps and peelings soon," Ailee said, "or he'll scream the place down." They picked up the wash basket, took a handle each, and strolled back towards the neat little homestead with its pile of dry turf, the curl of smoke from the chimney and the bright shining window pane winking and catching the sunlight. "Shoo, shoo," Mary Bridget told the hens who ran and pecked in front of her. Maisie, her favourite red hen, tried as usual to follow her into the shade of the kitchen. That old hen was far too cute for her own good, Aunt Nano often said. Nano lay dozing now, her rocking chair still in front of the fire. "Shh, Mammy," warned Mary Bridget. "She's asleep." "Shh," echoed her little brother Jody, imitating her. He looked up from where he had been playing quietly in the corner of the room. Their great-grandaunt looked so peaceful there, snoring ever so slightly. There might be some honey for you two later, whispered Ailee. Daddy is going to check the beehive for the both of ye. The children adored honey. A little bit spread on the fresh bread Ailee baked or spooned into their bowls of porridge was the best treat possible. They licked their lips at the very thought of it. Ailee was always thinking of little things to please the children and make them happy. When she was a girl, times had been very hard, and Auntie Nano said that she had never forgotten it. Now, Pet, will you do me a favour and take Jody out to play in the fresh air? Jody ran up to Mary Bridget, his sturdy 2-year-old hands grabbing at her skirt as he followed her outside. Stay near the house, Mary Bridget, warned Ailee. None of your gallivanting or exploring now, mind. Mary Bridget sighed. She'd had a mind to go down to the stream to look for pinkeens. Come on, Jody, she said. We'll just have to find something else to do. Jody nodded his curly brown head. As little brothers went, Mary Bridget guessed that Jody wasn't the worst. He knew how to play chasing, though he was so slow at running, and he was good at playing baby princes, that Mary Bridget had to rescue from all sorts of monsters and evil lords. Maisie clucked about and followed them, pecking busily as she went. Hen! Hen! Announced Jody, pointing a grubby finger at the bird. That's Maisie, Jody. Say Maisie. Hen! Repeated her brother solemnly. But Maisie is much more than just an ordinary old hen, said Mary Bridget dramatically, hunkering down on the grass as the dusty hen scratched at the ground. Maisie is a magic hen. Mary Bridget's eyes twinkled. Jody stood in front of his sister, his fingers opening and closing in a futile attempt to clutch at the darting bundle of rich brown-red feathers that jumped and fluttered to escape him. She lays golden eggs, Mary Bridget continued, dropping her voice, and she can see the Shia. But Jody ignored her. He didn't know anything about the fairies. He was much more interested in catching the creature. The Shia is the Irish word for fairies. Maisie pecked away, keeping just out of range of the two of them. Jody, if we're good and quiet, Mary Bridget went on, Maisie might lead us to one of her eggs, her special golden eggs. A shadow of confusion passed across Jody's small face. He liked eggs, though what eggs had to do with this clucking creature he wasn't sure. But he followed his big sister as she raced after Maisie, who was now squawking wildly and running madly in all directions. You'd think the child had been caught in a thorn bush, John. Just look at the state of him. Ailee was furious. Look at the clothes I washed yesterday. Mary Bridget kept her eyes on the dripping square of potato cake on her plate. What was all the fuss about? Jody had only a few scratches and scrapes. She could see that her father was trying not to smile. Do you know anything about this, Mary Bridget? John asked solemnly. Mary Bridget shrugged her shoulders and licked the smear of butter from her lips. I thought I saw the two of you chasing that yolk of a hen this afternoon, he added. Maisie, pronounced Jody, trying at the same time to flap his arms like the hen. Everyone burst out laughing. You two rogues, teased their father, tousling Mary Bridget's wild mop of hair and sticking the tip of his little finger into one of the dimples on her cheek. My laughing girl. Thank God for the food on the table, Nano broke in, and for the family and children to share it with. Amen, answered Ailee softly. Mary Bridget stared into the flickering flames of the turf and wood fire. Sitting hunched on a cushion in her nightclothes, she pushed her bare toes and feet close to the heat, watching the shadows from the flames dance around the room. The regular creak of Nano's heavy rocking chair was the only sound in the silence of the small cottage. Ailee was busy putting Jody to bed, and John had gone out to check the animals. Mary Bridget blew softly on the low fire. What are you doing, child? Asked Nano. I'm just giving a bit of life to the fire. You know you must be careful of the fire, Dot. Come and sit by me and let a bit of the heat out onto my old bones. Mary Bridget crouched beside Nano. Her great-grandaunt was the oldest and nicest person she knew. Nano, said Mary Bridget, tossing the tumble of blonde hair from her face and resting her cheek on the old woman's lap. Nano, will you tell me a story? The old lady sighed. not an exasperated sigh, but the sigh of one used to such a request from a favourite child. "Well, what kind of story would you be wanting then?" asked Nano, her soft blue eyes shining and the lines around them creasing. "Is it ghosts or goblins you want?" Mary Bridget considered. "No, not that kind of story tonight, Nano. The story of long ago." "Ah," said Nano, "of high kings and warriors and great deeds." "No," frowned Mary Bridget. "The story of Mammy and Michael and Peggy." "Ah," sighed Nano, shifting herself in the chair. "That story." The child was always pestering her for that story. "'Tis a story of courage," began Nano softly. Mary Bridget nodded, her dark eyes shining. "A story of a sister and a brother and a wee slip of a girl about your own age. The times were hard then, so hard. You see, the potato crop had failed. The people dug their crop only to discover that everything had turned to slime. Now everyone knew that as sure as night follows day, the hunger would come. From cabin to cabin, cottage to cottage, across the fields and farms of Ireland, they knew. And they waited." Ailee slipped back into the room. Leaning against the door, she listened as Nano's hushed voice went on. "Your Mammy and Uncle Michael and Auntie Peggy didn't want to go to the workhouse with the rest. So Ailee decided that they would run away across the countryside and try to find Lena and myself." Ailee closed her eyes as she heard again the story of her youth. So this first chapter we learned that Ailee now has 2 children, that Nano is still alive and that they're all living together. We also know that at this point from Wildflower Girl, that the other girl, Peggy, she's still across in America, we can only assume. Now, maybe you could try and make a prediction as to what you think is going to happen next. Also, try and put a picture in your head, a picture of what you hear, because that often helps you with your reading when you can imagine what's going on, like a picture story in your head. And try and do a prediction, and we'll do the next chapter tomorrow. That was chapter 1, the Homestead.